we can make some statistics about this. And as you see, there's a lot of effort in this process because always one driver has to write it down. And even though the drivers are good, they can't recognize all. So for example, if you're focused on something in the front, part of the vehicle, maybe you're not recognizing that there is an error in the back. And there are also some errors that drivers can't detect. So for example, if the battery is really low and there's no charge inside, you just get the error message in the end, but the drivers don't see it before. And we can do this with data analysis. And so there are many questions which are created. I brought you some of these. So what are the questions that I receive as a data analyst within this process? So for example, people want to know if a certain function even was tested. So if there's a new software version, maybe it was never tested, then you can't find an error. So the first question is a little bit like that. So how many kilometers has the latest software been tested in a certain city, for example? That might be interesting if you do something like sign recognition, then a city in the US can be treated different than a city in Germany. Or maybe you want to test about different road types. If you have a function like active cruise control, it's really different doing this in a city than on a highway, for example. And we also have some questions, as for example, if we have an error, you want to find out why was the error there. If you have a camera and it was raining, then it's really different than there was, for example, sun and it could blend you. And these are all questions that can be answered by data analysis. So if you remember the map from before, now we have put servers everywhere. And these servers are used for data analysis. Just to get some numbers, we have about 3 terabytes of data per day, which I created. And it's just the bus data, so it's not some raw data, so for example, as camera data, just the bus data. And this data is used to connect the people. So as you know, we're using Tableau. It's really easy to share the results. That's a big advantage compared to the manual process. And you already saw the questions before. We have a lot of questions, but we have around 3 categories. So the first is for test planning. This means, has my function been tested? Was it tested in all vehicle types, all software versions, and so on? The second part is defect detection. So we can detect, for example, if a button was pressed, but nothing happened. And this is one big part. For example, we are focused also on defects that the drivers can't detect. And the third part is KPI determination, because in the manual process, we had some drivers which made a list and they wrote down the timestamps when something happened, but they're not as accurate as, for example, data analysis. So with data analysis, we can just say, okay, there were 5 errors if you drive 10,000 kilometers. And that's really important for reporting. So I will get deeper into the technical details now. Here I brought the process, how we're doing data analysis, because for every part of this process, we have a different tool. And first, we need to understand the problem. So often if a person comes to me and says, I want to have analysis, they don't have a question, and you just have to figure out somehow, what do you really want, which filters do you need, which models are relevant, in which countries do you need the analysis. Then next, we have to do some data preprocessing. You will see later that that's most of the work. So when the preprocessing is done, it's about 80 or 90%. And then we are creating a model. And this model is then applied to the data. And from every session, so a session is when a driver does a ride and he comes back, then this is one session. And for every session, we apply a model. And this is done the bottom part here, running and monitoring the models. So it's a really big system with servers all around the world. We have about 100 servers and a Hadoop cluster to do all this model and running the models. And then we're in the part where it's getting to Tableau. We're doing some data analysis, some visual analysis. But it's just one of the last parts. And then I have here the part act. So you have data and you have some results, but you have to do something with it. And often after the act, the persons have some follow-up questions. That's why it's something like a loop. It never ends, data analysis. So I first start with the pre-processing. I already told you it's some network data that we have. And it's raw data, so it's just bytes. Just on an Ethernet wire, you have the same, just bytes, and we need to interpret it somehow. Just for getting a dimension, in a modern vehicle, we could have up to 50 buses and possibly up to 500,000 signals. This depends how many, what's within your car. So if it's a 7 series, you have a lot more data than, for example, in a 3 series. And then we need to know what's inside. For example, here, within the signal, there could be the speed. And here you see, okay, it's 2 bytes, but what does it mean? And we have some really large catalogs to do the interpretation. And then we get the information, for example, here it was a speed with 59 kilometers per hour. And this interpretation step is a lot of work, and we have a lot of data putting inside, and we just extract the signals which are relevant for us. So for example, if we put 3 terabytes of data inside, you get just some megabytes out. And this is a really important step. So these signals are then put to a model. And maybe you know something like a state model and state machines. You have some states and you have transitions. And we're modeling these transitions with conditions. So for example, we have initial state in the beginning, and could put there some condition like the speed. And if the speed is greater than 0, you go to the state driving. And if the speed is greater than 100 kilometers per hour, you could expect that the person is on a highway. So at least in Germany, he should be, because otherwise it's some law issue. And that's how we are creating models. And this is a really simple example. We have some models with hundreds of states. And we also have, for example, timing conditions within. So if there was an error within the next 5 seconds and stuff like that. Based on this model, we can then run the model. So I already told you we have about 100 servers worldwide. And this is the concept how it's working. So on every site, one site is one position on the map. We have some servers in Munich. It's the largest. We have more than half of the servers in Munich because there are most of the vehicles and most of the data, so we need most of the servers. And then we have one central server here. It's in Munich. It does all the job controls. So it says which job should run on which server, what should be done with data, which is received back in Munich. So and data is then written to an analytics database. The second database, which is here on the slide, is the application database. It contains all the metadata. So which jobs should be run where, when, who's responsible for which job, and stuff like that. And we have some end users, which are just getting some session information. They also have a UI. But most of our reports are done with Tableau. And Tableau is then based on top of the analytics database. And we also have some other databases. I guess it's just as in every company. We have a lot of databases, but this is our main database for this use case. Maybe to get some numbers, in 2018, we had almost 1 petabyte of data, which was processed with this model. And it was about 250,000 writes all around the world, which were analyzed. And then on top of this, we use Tableau. So I already told you we have many databases. So that's why we really need this cross-database joins in Tableau. And then we have a 8-core Tableau server. This is the advantage that we can just give anyone a license and anyone can look at it. And it's so easy to share the results using this. And we have some developers. So in our department, we have about 70 Tableau desktop developers, which are creating the models and also the Tableau dashboards. And sometimes we have some heavy users, and we give them also Tableau license, but most of our users, they do just use the server as a viewer. And here on the right side, I already mentioned some of the main points why we are using Tableau at this point. So first of all, we have a lot of databases, and they really need to join the data because it can't be copied into one data warehouse. It's too much, and it's in different departments, and it's more organizational issues than technical problems. Then the second part is really important for us, that we get automated extracts. Before we used Tableau, we always had to click once on Wednesday, and this is really a lot of time consuming, and you have to watch if all the reports are running and stuff like that. And since we have Tableau, I don't have to care about it. If there's an issue, it mostly doesn't depend on Tableau, but on our databases and the stuff we did before. And the last part, this is really important for us, is sharing the dashboards. We're our customer ourselves somehow, because we're creating the dashboards for ourselves, but we're also creating dashboards for other departments. So for example, for the production department, they want to know if the vehicles are good enough somehow to get produced at their site. We're also creating dashboards for developers. They want to know if the fix they put into their software, if it was good, if it worked. And that's why we need to share the results, because otherwise everyone at BMW would create his own dashboards, and we would make the work twice. So I talked a lot about the about the theory. I just want to show you some dashboards now. So unfortunately, I had to create some data because I wasn't allowed to show you the real data, so that's why we have not that much here inside. But I want to show you the principles, how dashboards look. So for example, this is a dashboard where we want to get some information about Querverkehrsassistent. So everything's in German at BMW, so it's something like cross-traffic alert. If you go with your car to a certain point and there's cross traffic, then you get a warning, or the car even can brake. And this should only happen just before an accident. So it's really rarely, and it shouldn't happen on a real road, because if the drivers are good enough, they should realize before. So that's why it's really important for us to get these points in time when it happens, and that it's really analyzed in detail if it, for example, was a wrong warning or a wrong braking event. And here we have a dashboard where we get all the warnings per model. So for example, if there's one model which will be released soon, so it's really important to just watch this model. And it's really interesting also for the developers to get the details. That's why we have the detail view here in the bottom. And we have some standard filters, something like model, which session has it been, and also some metadata, which is on another slide here. And in this case, I already told it shouldn't happen. But there's one case where it's okay, and that is if it's on a testing area at BMW. You can just test everything, and the drivers also do this. And so that's okay. And that's why we have a map here inside. And the developers know where the testing plans of BMW are. And here, for example, you see one testing point. It happened at Regensburg. And I don't know if there is any testing area, but I guess it isn't. So it's a real warning which happened here, and it should be analyzed in detail. Another dashboard that I brought is a KPI dashboard. So the normal process at BMW is that all the vehicles are driven on the weekends, and then on Mondays they come back. And the data is stored and analyzed, and on Wednesday we need to create our reports. That's why it's even so important that we create the report on Wednesday, because it's reported to the department leader on Friday. And therefore we use this dashboard. So here the line at the top is just the KPIs that are reported. So just this line is, there's made a screenshot, put into a PowerPoint slide and reported. And it's really a rough overview. So how many vehicles have been driven, how many life cycles were, this is how many times has the vehicle been started and driven around. And the really important thing just comes here, how many events have been occurred. So 100 events on 480,000 kilometers which have been analyzed. And there are certain events defined which shouldn't occur more often than 5 times, for example, 5 times per 10,000 kilometers. And this is the really important KPI, which, yeah, we all should try to achieve this. Here you can see over the weeks how this KPI was achieved. So for example, here in week 14, it was really, really good. Maybe we have some issues here in week 18 and we should try to fix the errors now. In this dashboard, we also have some details because this is just an overview for the management. And the details, it just needs to load some time. Here's the detailed information about everything. So what was the sessions, in which week did anything occur, which were the vehicles. It's a bit Excel style because most of our customers also like this and they want to have a line where everything is written and they need to do some further analysis. So they need a link and do this not within Tableau because we need some interpretation there. And this is just possible with customized tools. And here we have just an overview of all the errors, but we also have here root cause detection. So sometimes in the vehicles there's send a string. So I, for example, detected a reset, and then the string can be analyzed. And here we see, okay, if we just fix this error, this unexpected reset, we have much less errors. And that's somehow how things are prioritized at BMW. So the biggest errors should be fixed first, or the most important errors even. So it doesn't always match, but often it does. And so that were the main reasons why we used Tableau in the beginning. And then we started, everyone had a license, and they started using Tableau for everything. So even for tool monitoring, but we also have dashboards about planning the vacation. We have dashboards about budget, and really about everything that we need in our daily lives and where we have some data. And this is one dashboard which is about tool monitoring. I already told about the servers that we have on all sites. And here we need to monitor the servers if they are offline, if everything's running fine, if, there could happen anything with them. So for example, here in the top, I can see how many servers are offline and online. It's a screenshot from last week. That's why here we have 10 servers offline. There was a release, and they just had to be reactivated again. And, but if I can see here, okay, it's the name of which servers, I know which servers are big, which are small, then I can decide if something is important or not to, for example, reactivate them really now, or we can also do it next week. Then here on this side, you can see the queue. The queue is how many data still has to be processed on every site. So here you can see the most data is in Munich. This orange line here is Munich. And it's also can see this process that I told before. So on Mondays, the vehicles are coming back to BMW, and all the data comes in. This is this large peak here. And then we have a night, and all the data is processed, at least a bit. And then it's Tuesday, and next vehicles come in, and the Tuesday night, and so on. This is going until Friday, and then no vehicles come back because of the weekend, and the data can be processed. And then hopefully, sometimes there should be some idle time, and then it starts again. And for example, here I can see there happened something special, and this was the release I told you about. There was about 1 or 2 hours where no jobs had been processed, and then I can see this in the queue. But me as a data scientist, I want to monitor my jobs. So for example, I'm responsible for driver assistance systems, so I can just filter here for my job. And then I get the information. So are there still jobs in the queue? Yes, 2 jobs still need to be processed. They're also running some jobs. And I can see per site which jobs are running, what are the status. So for example, here in Dingolfing, you can see all jobs run an error. So maybe I should fix it. Another site, for example, here in Woodcliff Lake, there had been 18 jobs. They all were on success, so everything's fine there. Okay. And one last point, I already told we use Tableau for everything. We also embed it. So, for example, here we have a tool. It's an overview of all analysis that we have. Because we started creating analysis in the beginning, and everyone knew his analysis, but not the one of the others. And then we needed an overview, and we created a tool. And within the tool, we just had a list in the beginning. And then, we needed an overview. So I created a Tableau dashboard. And I saw the possibility of embedding it into the tool, and now here everyone can see it. And it's really easy to just embed it. And it's easy for us to change it also. So if I want to do something else in this analysis overview, I can just create it myself, upload it on the Tableau server, and it's deployed. Maybe a short side story. When we deployed Tableau and also used it in our department, we also got the mobile version for our iPhones. And everyone downloaded the mobile version. I really liked it in the beginning, but then came the questions, how do I need to log in? And everyone asked. And even the head of department asked, how can I log in? How can I get my newest KPIs? So if you use Tableau, use the mobile version. It really makes fun and playing around with the dashboards. Maybe, for example, if you're on the subway in the morning, you can just have a look at the tool monitoring dashboard and check if all the servers are running. I really like that. So I showed what we're making. Most of the time it's working fine, but not always. And that's what I want to tell you about now. So most of the time when it's Wednesday, the people are coming and saying, well, it didn't refresh, and it needs to be fast, and we have to do it now. Okay, then I check, and most of the time it's just the database. So, for example, the database is slow, or the database credentials aren't matching, the query runs too long, and what are we doing? And we have some workarounds for dealing with all this stuff. So. First of all our queries are aborted if they run on the server for more than 1 hour. That's no solution, but at least we can see the problem. And if the queries are aborted, then we have to move some of the calculations to the pre-processing. This works fine in our use case because we have these models, and sometimes if you're just a bit lazy, you're making all the logic in the SQL and in the Tableau dashboard, and then you're realizing, okay, it runs too long, I have to create a new model or make the model more complex. This is this part, moving calculations to data pre-processing. This works fine if everything is trace data, so the data that we get out of vehicles. But sometimes we have to join the data, we have to make some unions, and this is really lasting a lot of time. Then we tried to use Tableau Prep. And was a bit confusing in the beginning, and we were a bit struggling, but it's getting better with every version that comes out of Tableau Prep. And I guess we could use it somehow a bit more, because most of the time we try to use it with SQL, and that's why it's also so slow. So that's another part, we're trying to use it with Tableau Prep, or to deal with Tableau Prep. And as I told, we use Tableau for everything, which is somehow visualization. So we also use it for monitoring our Tableau dashboards and for monitoring the Tableau dashboards itself. So we have a dashboard where we can see how long have the extracts been running, did they meet the time schedules and stuff like that. And for example, also we measure the size of the dashboards. Can it be somehow decreased? It's always a trade-off between size and performance. And now I told already a bit about the Tableau Prep issue. Let's go deeper into this. In the beginning, we just used Tableau Prep locally. So if you want to refresh it, you have to run it on your local computer. This is working fine if you just create a dashboard once. But in our use case, it has to be refreshed every week or even every day. or sometimes even twice or 3 times a day. So that's a lot of work, and we can't do this manually. And there's a command line interface for automating this, and we use it a lot. So every day on the server, the Tableau prep flows are executed automatically. Now within the new server version, 2019.1, it's possible to also schedule this on the server. We got the version last week, so really, I'm looking forward to this, to reduce this command line interface usage. And then the next part where something automating is we're using the Python interface. So for example, last year we had a database change. In the beginning we were on one Postgres database, now we're on another one. We have about more than 100 dashboards, and we didn't want to change it in every connection. So we used the Python script to just get all dashboards in the beginning which used the old database. Then we had to check manually, is it okay? Can we switch them? And then we changed all the interface, the database connections to the new database. So I can just give you the hint. If you have to do something like bulk changes, use this Python interface. It's really, really good. And the last point where we're using something of the interfaces of Tableau is filing. So every day the extracts are refreshed. But sometimes a head of department comes and says, what was reported 3 weeks ago? And then we have to say, well, we don't know. The data 3 weeks ago was already deleted, and the Tableau dashboard now is just from this week. And then we have to think about how is it working, and every Wednesday we put the most important reports onto a share, and therefore we're using also a command line script. We're downloading all the data, putting it on the share. And this is the advantage that we can also then recreate the Tableau dashboards. We can just replace the data source by the Excel files. And that's really, really important for us to have such a filing system. And these interfaces already have been a part of these reasons why Tableau fits so well into our tool landscape. I already told about the process, and in every process we have at least one tool. And Tableau is just one of them. And if it wouldn't connect well to the other tools, this wouldn't work. But it really connects well because it can be connected to any database. So we have Postgres, Oracle, Vertica, Hive, and we can just use Tableau for anything. And it also connects fine to all the automation workflows that I showed before. For me, one reason for using Tableau is saving time, because it also saves my time. I somehow coordinating all the Tableau requests in our department, so if someone needs help, you can just come, and I'm really happy that that it's so easy to deal with Tableau, because this reduces my working time in Tableau support. So first of all, I showed the manual process before. There's a lot of work that has to be done manually. This is where Tableau is saving time within the process. You get your KPI dashboards, for example, just automatically. You get all the information done by the server. Then the next, where I am a big fan of, is this intuitive user interface. If I have a new Tableau user, I just get him a license, show him our infrastructure. I show how he can connect to a database and make some first visualizations. This takes about half an hour, and then I can just leave the person alone and he can learn Tableau. It's so easy. And if there's any question, most of the questions, they can just be Googled. Because if I have a question, a Tableau user almost had it before. So just the BMW issues, the internal issues, there maybe we have to connect within BMW, but I really like this possibility of Googling and just getting a result. And the last thing where we can really save time is these extract refreshes. We had another tool before, and we always had to check if everything is fine. Did the reports refresh? Was the connection close to the database? This is a really important issue, because otherwise you're sitting there and restarting all your servers which are making the reports just to close the database connection. Too many database connections have a lot of load on the database, and we want to avoid this. And that's where Tableau saves a lot of time since we're using it. And it also shares time because results doesn't have to be created twice because of sharing. So I already told that we have a lot of departments which are working together, and often we have the same questions within all the departments. How many kilometers have been driven? Where was the driver? Which was the driving behavior? And stuff like that. And we have just one dashboard which can be shared among all of these. And this sharing is also really interesting if I want to get some new inspiration. So on our server, we have 10 or 12 projects. It's on different topics, and sometimes I'm just scrolling through it just to get a cool visualization. So everyone knows a map, but maybe you don't know how to create a heat map, and then you can get an example of someone else. You can ask him, how did you do this? And just sharing your knowledge of Tableau. And about sharing this knowledge, it's also easier to connect all the people within BMW. And often I have some customers which get a Tableau dashboard from us in the beginning, and they say, hey, then, okay, I want to do it myself. I also want to change something. And then I give him a license, and he does all this stuff on itself. So this is a possible solution how self-service data analytics can be enforced and can be enabled somehow. I already told about the connection within the company. So in this slide, I want to tell you a bit more about the community. So we have one central IT department, and they're monitoring the servers, setting up the servers, making all the updates. They are our connection to the Tableau guys also. And then we have one Tableau responsible per department. It's also someone like a site responsible. In our department, that's me. I'm looking on the side. I'm creating new dashboard, new projects, for example. And then we have one project responsible, which has a look at the content of its project. And it's somehow like a hierarchical structure from the organization side. But then we have also a community, and maybe it somehow can be more active, but it's really good up to now. We have a user group in Plaza. Plaza is something like an internal social network. And you can just post a question there and get them some results. So on almost every question, there was an answer that I saw up to now. And we also get some important information about Plaza. So for example, you can get the information when will be the next server updates, what are cool visualizations, what are the new features of the new version. I can just click through and see, okay, in 2019, I get my Tableau prep conductor, and then I'm really happy. And that's somehow to connect all the people within BMW. Last year, we also had a Tableau day. It was somehow like a small conference. We had some keynotes, some speakers from within BMW who were presenting their use cases. And we also had some doctor sessions. And the most important from my side of this Tableau day was just to connect all the Tableau users. You get to know other use cases, you get to know other departments, you can learn how they use it, and you all have the same issues somehow and the same problems. On this conference here, it's more about Tableau in general, but if you have it within your company, you can all complain about, for example, in our case, connecting to Oracle databases, which is really complicated within the BMW. And it just depends on the company about which issues you have, and you can exchange on these and maybe find some solutions. And all the questions that I have on which can't be answered within, for example, Plaza or on a Tableau day or within some other meeting that we have, then can go to the IT support. And the IT support is also the one who offers a meeting once per month, and they inform the users. So there's just the one-way communication. On the other points that I mentioned before, it's two ways. So also the customers talk to other customers, but this meeting that is monthly, it's more one way where we get some information about server updates or stuff like that. For example, new versions of Tableau Prep which are released, or some issues which are within the BMW network, and so on. So as a quick summary, what can you take from this lesson, or what can you learn? So first of all, the first topic was what are the advantages and disadvantages of Tableau. So if you extract refresh and the query is not running too slow, then Tableau is really good and you can rely on it. And so it's also easy to learn, and it really helps you getting the information out of your data. It helps you in visual analysis a lot. The most important within your company is also to build a network. So just connect to other people, compare if you have the same issues, and maybe you can help yourself. This is really important, just helping each other. And then you have the point, we use a lot of pre-processing within our models, but maybe you can use some other data pre-processing tools as well. I guess it's really important to do not everything in Tableau, because it's an analysis tool, but it's not data pre-processing, data interpretation, and so on. So for example, our bus data, if we just would load the whole bytes inside, it wouldn't work, so we need some pre-processing stuff before. And then I showed you some of the cases where we use the APIs. I hope you got some idea maybe how you can automate some of your Tableau dashboards or Tableau refresh, Tableau prep refresh, and stuff like that. So thank you for listening. I'm now free or open for your questions, but you can also ask some questions later. Just, let's stay on the conference still here.